And I'll start off and I'll tell you the topic we're going to talk about. Ready? Come on. Let's talk about sex, baby. Oh, I hope that wasn't inappropriate. I had to ask a bunch of my friends. I really wanted to do that, and they all told me it was a good idea. So I hope you guys agree. So we're going to talk about sex. I think it's important to talk about it. It's a very important part of a relationship, and I'll bring the fastball and just be honest and transparent with you all about how what that's like in our relationship. And so I talked to you guys a little bit. And actually, I thought about this and I felt remiss that I loved all the other speakers I've been on for the whole day. And I feel like I forgot to thank everybody. It's been awesome. A lot of very inspiring and exciting things that have helped me grow and I just love sharing AA with people that are like-minded. So so thank you for everyone that went before. So talk about sex. So I talked a little bit earlier about kind of where I was when it came to sex, and I learned about it, right? Like, I don't ever remember having my father, my mom, or anybody sit me down and talk to me about, here's what it means to have sex. I don't remember that. You know what I mean? I remember being in like health class and looking at pictures and giggling with your friends. I remember that. I remember, watching porn. And that's really where I learned the lessons, and God, we don't, what an awful way to learn the lessons about sex. It's just not real. I thought it was real. I thought that's the world, right? And I had a lot of older friends and different things like that. And no one ever really talked to me about it. We just talked about sex and about that way. And for men, at least I can't say this for all men. How can I talk for all men? I can talk about my experience and and for me, it was about, the more women you slept with, the more women loved you, the more women needed you, the more powerful, the better of a man you were. And, I have that in my mind. It says, I need to go out there and I need to be this guy. But then deep down within me, I'm not good enough for them. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good in the sack. And I'm not as good in having sex as good as I need to be. And I have all these fears and inadequacies and women are just things like objects to me. You know what I mean? And I don't know any different. I don't know how to have a relationship like that. And so I get in this deal with Melissa. And I bring that to the party. I bring that to the game. And, I'm extremely selfish when it comes to things, I don't know how to do it, and some of the things that I'll share some lessons that I've learned around sex. And the first one is it's the third tradition. What is access to Alcoholics Anonymous? Access to membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is that you have a desire, you're drunk and you have a desire to stay sober. I loved the judge earlier that called us drunks. I feel like that's a term of endearment. I don't know about you guys. When he calls me a drunk, I'm like, oh, thank you. You know what I mean? Alcoholic, I'm like, drunk. That's right. And anyway, so that's the only thing that we need to have access to membership in AA. So what's required to have access to sex in a relationship? Am I someone that withholds sex? Do I use it as a power play? I'll only give it if you do what I want you to do. Am I someone that makes sex all about me, or is sex something that is, as long as you're part of a loving, committed relationship, that's part of the game. And there's times that I don't want to have it. That's something that I've made mistakes on a lot. Like I'll only do that with you when I want to. You know what I mean? And there's times that we aren't aligned on that. And so I think what's important for me is that I don't withhold sex, and I can meet Melissa when she wants it. You know what I mean? Like another thing that we learned is that for a lot of people, I don't know if it's like a movie thing or it's like sex is for nighttime, right? That's for night, right? Before you go to bed, sex. I don't know. I learned that. That was an idea that I had, and I'm tired at night. My days have been busy. I often don't want to do that. And so we learned the lesson of, instead of always fighting about not having sex at night, why don't we do that when we want to? So if that's 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon, let's do that. It's a lot nicer now that the daughter's a bit older. That makes things a little easier. You know what I mean? But make it so what it works for our relationship, right? And it's the third tradition talks about that. Only thing that is to have access to sex in a relationship is that you're in it and it's loving, and it meets our sex ideal. I think that's critical. I didn't talk about that earlier. I don't know if Melissa did it as much either, but like getting a sex ideal. My sex ideal has changed so much from the first inventory I did. It was like, don't use women to fill your self-esteem and hurt them. Like that was the extent of it. You know what I mean? And then today, right, 8 years married, 11 or 12 years in a relationship, it looks a lot different. Like the conversation about me being a giving partner, about me wanting to be emotionally present and supportive, I could not have even considered that 10 years ago. It wasn't even something that could have came up in conversation. I wasn't even there. And so the more I grow, the more I stay sober, the more I forget his name. I can't remember why he's out in Texas, Kate and something P. Forget his name, doesn't matter. But he talks about how you ever heard the onion? You know, you take another layer off the onion. He goes, how big is this effing onion anyway? You know, and it just layer after layer. It's like, my God, you know, but as the layers keep getting pulled back, I keep growing deeper and my sex ideal continues to expand. And I get to be a better partner. And I really believe that Melissa deserves that from me, you know? And I believe that, and I'm not talking about just pure sex, I'm talking about relationship, you know what I mean? But I feel like she deserves me to be the best possible person that I can be for her. And the way that I can do that is to be spiritually fit. I regardless of anything I learned about emotional abuse and all these different things, like if I can't be spiritually fit and recovered from alcoholism and in the work of AA, I can't be in a relationship. It just won't work. You know what I mean? I'm just that sick where I need that level of spiritual fitness to even get in the game. And so I feel like that's my responsibility. That's not her responsibility. I love the people that I sponsor that come to me and they think it's my job to give them readings or work to stay spiritually fit. And it's like, that's not my job as your sponsor. My job as your sponsor is to help listen to you, to love you, to be honest and transparent with you, to guide you, to give you actions to take based on what you're giving me. But that's their responsibility, just like it's mine. And I feel like it's not my wife's responsibility for my spiritual condition. I need to take care of that so that I can bring that to the game. She deserves it. You know what I mean? And so that's something that I've really learned, you know. Another thing, right of appeal. You know, I'll tell you some things that I used to do. It's pretty immature. But one of the things that I used to do that she didn't like, some people might like this. She didn't like it. She'd run up the stairs and I'd slap her butt, right? She didn't like that. She would say, stop doing that. Stop doing that. And I say, oh, come on. You know what I mean? And so she has the right of appeal. She has the right to tell me, I don't like that. You know, and my responsibility is to, and I'm not very good at this. I love when Don talks about his story, and I don't want to steal his thunder because we'll talk about it later. I don't know. It's not really his topic, but like when he talks about his wife getting mad at him and saying something to him, and he goes and spends quiet time, and he's like, what God shows to him and says, is your wife a liar? Because he thinks what she's saying is not right, you know, and God tells him, is your wife a liar? No, you have to trust what she says, you know? So if my wife says she doesn't like something, she's not a liar, right? She's not doing that just to be mean to me. I need to give her the right of appeal. I need to listen to her. You know, if she doesn't like a way that I'm coming about sex, if she doesn't like the way I'm coming about her, or really about anything, I need to listen to her. Or am I too selfish to do that? You know what I mean? You know, I'll tell you one of the biggest lies that I believe. Let me think about what I want to talk about here. Failed their tradition, broken ideas. I think that's all I'm going to say for this one. I'm going to save the next thing for the different topics. That's all I'm going to say about that. So Melissa, you got a minute early, but I'm going to kick it to you. Take it away.
Okay, I'm impressed with your timeliness. Okay, hi again, guys. I'm Melissa, alcoholic. You know, and I want to thank everyone too. We've been able to be here all day long. It's been amazing to listen to all the speakers and the 10-minute speakers. I got some CDs from the International Convention at Toronto, and one of the ones that I listened to over and over again was Judge Flores talking about what he kind of talked about today. And then, you know, one time I saw him in person at a forum, and then even just being here today, it's like, I listen to your CD so much, right? I feel like he's like a rock star, right? Like usually I listen to music CDs. I listen to his, and the story about like the chicken coop, you know? And I've known who Jennifer is because sometimes people say, do you know these other informed, like well-spoken women, right? And so it's a real honor to be here. So when Alex and I like met each other and we became friends, and I told him like that I liked him, and his response to that was like, "That's cool, you can like me." He would flirt with me, and I would say like, "I think you might like me too because you're always flirting with me." And he said, "No, I don't like you. Why would you think that?" And so one of the things that he used to say to me sometimes, well, he said it to me one time, is that he had the concepts tattooed in a lower area of his body, and that he had the warranties tattooed onto a very specific part of his lower body area. And I was like, I think you're flirting with me. I think you're like AA flirting, that the concepts are tattooed onto your private regions. Like that's like AA service flirting. Like I do think that you like me.
AA flirting, that's the best, baby. That's it.
So like when I think about sex, like I want to talk about a couple of things. One of them is like, I think that like there's a lot of this idea of like humility when it comes to this. So I lack humility. Like I think I was maybe born without it. Maybe alcoholism took it away. I don't know. But I always have this idea that like I'm so much worse than everyone else. And so when I was growing up, I had this idea that only people that have flat stomachs have sex. And, my weight has always gone up and down, but I've never had a flat stomach. Even when I was a regular shaped kid, my stomach was always round. And I grew up with this idea that only people with flat stomachs have sex, which I don't even know why I believe that, because I look at the world and I look at parents, but I mean, I had this idea. And it wasn't until I like did a sex inventory in sobriety that my sponsor said, like, people can tell that your stomach is flat or not. And like everyone has sex, like everyone for the most part has sex. And so like what I know a lot today is there's like this humility in being human, right? Like we learned about the humility of being an AA member and that like we're no better, no less than, our 12 tradition talks about that. And I believe it so much. And so like we are no better than anyone else. And so like a lot of times I'll talk to my sponsees that will call me and say, I'm going to be single forever. I'll never have sex ever again in my whole entire life. And I say like, are you that different from the human race? Like humans have sex, like it's a part of things, like allow that humility to grow. We're just like everyone else. Right. And maybe sometimes people have a lot of sex. Some people wait a couple years in between, but like it will come back to you. In the fourth concept, when it talks about voting rights and it says like we let our members vote, it says there are no second class AA citizens. Like there's no second class AAs. And I use that idea with one that I sponsored, that like there's no second class humans, right? Like the humility of that, right? We can so much say like I'm so much better or so much worse, it'll never happen to me. Like let's allow that humility of like our principals here to say like, oh, it could happen to me, and I always tell them too, I'm like, someday you're going to call me and say like, I hate my boyfriend and you're having sex. Like we're gonna have that conversation, but we will all grow into that. Alex does like a retreat sometimes with like his sponsors and other speakers and men that he sponsors in this whole like men's retreat. And so one time they had a speaker there who said like, I give all my sexual energy to my wife. I don't do anything sexual that doesn't involve my wife. Right. So no masturbation. Right. And I have a couple of sponsees that are either married or engaged or dating someone there, and their significant others came home and said, giving all my sexual energy to you. And you don't really have a say in it. And so they would call me and say like, I don't want to have sex every day. Like, I don't want to fulfill this thing that he used to do. Like, I don't want to do that. And so there's a lot of like communication, right of decision. Like it wasn't up to the men to say, you're getting all my sexual energy and we're going to like do that, 5 times a week, every single day, like the right of decision and right of communication. It's not a right of communication, but communication. I have the service manual on my phone. I have like a lot of AA books on my phone. I love them. They're always with me. Also, you can look up in the dictionary. And so I searched in the service manual today, like communication, and there's 54 instances of when communication is, right? And so like communication, like communicate. And it is okay as a woman to say like, you can use your sexual energy in another way that doesn't involve me every day of the week, right? Another thing that I would talk about sex is like knowing when Alex makes a mistake. So years ago, Alex's brother got married, and his brother had like a very stereotypical men bachelor party, right? They went to a city, they went to like a baseball game, and they went to a bunch of strip clubs, right? And so Alex went on this trip. We talked about it. There was gonna be, I was thinking about that today. Like, what a way to start your marriage. Let me go see as much naked women as possible. But that's what they did, And so like Alex helped plan this trip. Alex took, I think, like 2 AA friends. And then it was a lot of his brother's like high school and college friends. And so there's strip clubs every day, but there's also strippers. And so Alex was talking to me about how the friends had hired strippers that were going to come to the hotel room maybe once or twice. And Alex and I talked, and both of us were in agreement that we wouldn't be comfortable with the either other person being in a hotel room with several members of the opposite sex naked, engaging in like, sexually turning on activities, right? What strippers do. And so we made an agreement that like when he went there, like he would step out of the hotel room when the strippers came. And so he went to this bachelor party. It's funny because I think when he went to the bachelor party, I went to an AA forum, opposite places that we were at. And I knew talking to him, like after that like he was probably lying to me and that he had watched the strippers. And he would say, nope, you're wrong, you're crazy, it didn't happen. But like, you know how you can just tell when someone is like not telling the truth, right? When you tell your sponsees are lying. And so probably a couple years later, he was going on a work trip to Las Vegas, and some of the men that he worked with were like actually going to pay to go on the work trip out of their own money and lie to their wives and go to Las Vegas so that they could go to see like strip clubs and strippers. And I said, Alex, I'm kind of nervous about this. Like what happened before? I really do think you saw the strippers. And he said, okay, you're right. I'll tell you the truth. I did go see them. And he said, but I didn't go see them to hurt you. And I didn't go see them to like not fulfill like this agreement that we had with each other. So I was so afraid. He said, I'm so afraid of what my brother's friends think of me. And I was so afraid of what they thought of me when like I was like this young teenage punk who couldn't get sober. And even as I got sober, that my brother's friends are, older and cooler and they're drinking. And I was just so afraid of them that's why I didn't go. And that's not to be that or do that to hurt you. And I think about that and like how important it is for me as a person like that believes in God and has lived in the steps like to believe that, right? And so there's a line that I think about this sometimes in the Concepts 3, and it's talking about how our world services can sometimes make mistakes. And it says there should always be charity for occasional mistakes, and trust should be our watchword. And so I don't know if anyone else uses that sentence as an example of how their husband went and watched strippers in a hotel room. And that's the principle that guided them through that. But for me, like it was true, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't doing this to hurt me. And I get the fear of what everyone thinks of me. You know what I mean? If I'm on a trip with, if I'm a man and there's 10 men and we're gonna watch strippers and like I say like, oh, I'm not about that. Like I get that. He was already sober and didn't drink. It was enough, and so that's a lot of like what I have found like with those things. Alex has, on and off, like watched pornography, and he said, I watch it too much and it's a problem and I'm going to stop doing it. And I sponsor women whose boyfriends and fiancés and husbands, or significant others sometimes like also do that. And, for a long time, like, wow, Alex wasn't doing it anymore. Like you should have your significant other talk to him about it. And then he came to me one day and he said, I've kind of been lying about that. I have been doing it sometimes, like when I go out on a work trip, and I need to tell you the truth. And again, like, I know that he wasn't doing this to like get me, you know what I mean? Like when I was drinking and I engaged in sexual activities with my friends' boyfriends, like it was very selfish. It was about what I wanted, when I wanted it, how I wanted it. And sometimes I was trying to get you because maybe you weren't really my friend. And so I've learned and our concepts talk so much about trust. We trust these people, like to have this trust in my relationship too. And that like, God knows it. God knows our heart. God knows my heart, Okay. So that's all for me about sex, and back to you, Alex, about money.
Nice. I should have had a rap song for the money. Dollar bills. Yeah. Nice. Anyway, but, thank you, Melissa. That was great. And, yeah. Definitely. So let's talk about money, right? So when Melissa and I got together, she lived in Buffalo, I lived in Rochester. We were an hour apart. And, she had Emily, and Emily was like 3 or 4. And then after a year, we decided to move in together. And so she, and this is how selfish and immature I am. It blows my mind how immature I can be, and I love Bill C. I heard him talk in this group. He says, in AA, when people say, just tell, if you want me not to do something, just tell me to do it and I'll do the opposite. I got problems with authority. He goes, we act as if that's alcoholism. And he goes, that might be a cute response for someone when they're 14, 15, normal. But when you're like 30s, 40s, it's just downright immature. It's stupid. You know what I mean? And I love that. I think that's so true. You know what I mean? And I'm just so immature. A lot of my growth has been here, just getting rid of my immaturity. And Bill Wilson talked about that when he talked about perfect security. It's really the heart of emotional sobriety, I believe, is just immaturity, And so she moves in with me. Oh, she had a job teaching, a daughter there, they all life. And then she's going to move to Rochester. And she says to me, she goes, I really want to know that we're like, this is serious. We're going towards marriage. And I'm so scared time of my life. I couldn't see the fact that she's quitting a job she went to get a degree for, and like where her daughter is, you know what I mean? Like, I just could see that this is scary. Marriage is scary. And so I say, no, I don't know about all that. And she still did move here. And she's a teacher. So in New York State, anyway, you have, I think it was 4 or 5 years or something like that. After you get your bachelor's degree, you have to get a master's degree to keep the certification. And so we made a joint decision. I always leave that out. We made a joint decision that she was going to not work and she was going to go to school and get her master's degree in a year, or I think it was a year. And the fear just railroaded me. You know what I mean? I made probably a quarter of what I make today. I had never supported a family before. I didn't know how to, I just didn't know how to do it. And I didn't know how to, like, how do you join bank accounts? How do we have joint money? You know what I mean? How do we do all of that? Right. And so my best thinking is this. All right, Melissa, I'm going to have access and control of all of our money. You can ask me for money. I'll give you an allowance, but you have to clear it with me first. And I think when I said that to her, she laughed. I think exactly what you guys are doing. She laughed at me. And I said, this is a really good plan. I did not clear with my sponsor. It just made it up between me and myself. It's a great plan, and control, right? This delusion that I have some kind of control. If I can control it, I'll be okay. One of the things I thought I could manage. And we used to fight about money. And I ended up seeing a therapist one time, and he asked me a question. He goes, well, what are you and Melissa's? Because what we ended up doing is we ended up putting our money together. We did end up putting our money together. And we would fight. I would look at the bank account all the time. Why are you spending this? Why are you spending this? What's this? What about just fear? And we would fight, And I remember going to a therapist, and the therapist said to me, they go, what's your short and your long-term goals financially? I don't know. Do you guys have a budget? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, we never talked about money. Like, we just put our money together. And then I was out here thinking that she's against me, right? She's going to spend all the money. We're going to be broke and homeless. She's just spending it on clothes. She's using me for my tiny salary that I had. You know what I mean? Like, I have all these thoughts in my head. And the thing he talked to me about was really the second tradition. He really talked about the first tradition, money. I believe money is a spiritual energy, right? We believe, this is both our group consciences, that everything that we have in our lives is to be used for the service of God. Our home, our finances. We've had lots of drunks come and live with us. We've spent lots of our money on alcoholics. That's what we decide to do. And it seems like, I believe that God gives us enough energy to do his will, right? God's not going to say, go do my will, and I'm not going to give you the resources to do it. So I fully believe that if we take the resources that God gave us and put that into his service, those resources will be replenished. That's been my experience financially. I've only continued to make more money, and I continue to give certain and use those resources to help other people. And same thing with Melissa, And so anyway, we sat down and we had to talk about what our common welfare is. What's our short-term and our long-term goals? What's right for our marriage and our family? We have to come up with our thing. One of the things is we really want to send our daughter to college with no loans, no debt. That's a goal. I want her to be able to graduate college we want her to graduate college with no debt. We want to be able to be caught up on our bills. We want to be able to go on a vacation once a year, right? We want to be able to enjoy the fellowship. We want to be able to, when someone in AA is struggling, we want to be able to help them out financially. We want to be able to take newcomers to dinner. These are our goals, right? And that's what our common welfare of our marriage is. That's our group conscience. And then we take that and we develop a budget. I don't have an income where I could not have a budget. We need to have a budget. You know what I mean? And so we put, based on our goals, based on our group conscience and our common welfare, we then put how we're going to spend those resources to do that. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I learned, a couple other principles that I learned, is that right before Melissa and I would always talk about money, you could bet on it. It's going to be a fight. Money equals fight, period. You know what I mean? And so one of the things I think my sponsor at the time suggested is that we schedule our conversations about money, right? So, hey, we got to talk about money. Our budget's coming up. Let's talk about it on Friday. Does that work for you? That works for me. And we could become spiritually prepared, right? I could talk to my sponsor. We could pray and meditate. We could get to a place where we have that conversation. We're a team. The biggest lie, I believe, if I really look at the fights that get nasty with Melissa, that are more than just like disagreements that we have to communicate through. It's about ego. I get this idea that I need to be right? My sponsor says it all the time, and I love it. The biggest lie I believe is that I have to be right, powerful, and effective. And that's the prayer. That's the prayer I said before I came here today is, God, please relieve me of my need to be right, to be effective, and to be powerful. Get rid of that. So that's humility to me, and I had to get rid of that. And I had to go and show up with Melissa on what's best for us and our common welfare, with our money. We had to have a right of decision. How does the right of decision play into this? Well, we have a budget, right? So Melissa might have X amount of money. I have X amount of money we could spend that we don't have to get clearance from the other person on. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to join a country club. I really like golf. Love golf. I'm actually obsessed with golf. It's a problem I've had to scale back. You know what I mean? But that's a sizable expense. I can't just go and join a country club without Melissa signing off on that, And so we had to talk about that. We had to talk about, look at our budget. Here's how much it's going to be. Is this something you can get on board with? We took us a while to talk through it. And finally, it was the best thing for, she agreed that maybe it's not the best thing for our family, but it's good for me. And she's going to support that. You know what I mean? And so, so she did. Another thing that I'll say, so we have the right decision. She can go and spend money on things she wants to spend on without me critiquing her. And we are on the same page. We have a group conscience. And so I know that she's going to fall under the group conscience. And I'll tell you, when it comes to money, and she'll talk about it, I'm sure probably in her talk, that's an area where she could struggle a little bit, money to make you feel good, buying stuff, you know what I mean? And just like she talked about sex for me, right? With porn or the lies that I did, why don't I let her off the hook? You know what I mean? We're not perfect. Am I someone that uses these problems as a weapon towards her? I look at the bank account. Oh, you spent over the budget. Let me get you. You know what I mean? No, let me be gentle and kind and loving, because that's an area that she needs to grow in. You know what I mean? And that's really important. I think about right of participation. One of the areas that I've struggled in my sobriety is I make a significant amount more money than she does. And she would say that. Do I use that as a weapon? If I do, that's a bunch of crap. That's not fair. You know what I mean? And so I have done that in my sobriety. When I've gotten in really bad fights, I've thought, well, I'm just going to cut the money off. You know what I mean? I'm going to do that. And I've used it as a weapon, and it's just so unfair. It's so not right. It doesn't matter how much money each person brings to the table. It's our money. And you can really expand on that. And it'll be the next topic we talk about, but it's all ours. It's not mine or hers. It's ours. And there's an overall amount of work and things that have to get done in our household. There's chores that have to get done. There's bills that have to get paid. There's stuff that has to get done in our marriage. And for anyone that's not married or is like me, this is going to be you're not going to like what I'm about to say, really going to piss you off, but it's true. And that is that marriage is not equitable. It's not. Marriage isn't fair. If you want marriage to be fair, you're not going to be married long. You're just not, Melissa and I are very, very different. And if I want to have her treat me in the way that she needs to be, I'll put it like this. Like recently we had to go to an event that I didn't want to go to. And so we have a policy that says for her to be around my family for like hours and hours and hours can be very intense for her. It's a lot. And so we set like time limits, you know what I mean? And Debbie's been super helpful with this, because when it's like a once in a lifetime thing, when it's like a big event, no time limit. But we have thought about that a lot. And so we've come to a policy that we've agreed upon, and it works for us. Well, we had an event that I wanted to enact that policy. And instead of me coming to her and saying, hey, I'm really having a hard time today, I'm anxious, or I'm not feeling good, can I just go for 4 hours or 3 hours? I went to her and said, I'm enacting the policy and I'm only going to do it like this. And, and so she got mad at me, and I got into this place of like, well, this is inequitable. It's not fair. It's not the same for both of us. And I called my sponsor, and he just laughed at me. He goes, when the hell did marriage become equitable? You know what I mean? When did you start keeping score, dude? Biggest problem that I can have in a marriage is that I keep score. I did this and this and this and this for you. I make all this money. Here's what I bring to the table. So that makes me not have to do anything else. I can behave that way. That's an old idea that I had. That's how it was with my dad. My dad made a crap ton more money than my mother, and he would sleep until 2:00 in the afternoon while she was outside mowing the lawn, doing all the yard work, and he'd be playing in his video games and like doing work for work. And she hated it. and she was mad at him. And I don't know where in my mind I thought that was a good idea, because I saw they didn't like each other. They weren't happy. But I thought that's the way it goes. I make the money, you do the work, leave me alone. And Melissa, one time, Ted said something to me. She said, because I said, well, that's how it is. That's how people are, something like that. And she goes, did you ever think, two things she said. She goes, did you ever think that maybe that didn't work for them and that maybe we can do what works for us? And I never considered it. I never considered that we don't have to do what our parents did or what we've seen others do. And we can do what works for us, what works for our group conscience, our common welfare. What does God want us to do, And game changer for me. Today, we don't argue about money. I don't know the last time we argued about money. We are a team when it comes to money. We have aligned goals, shared interest, and she gets to do a lot of stuff that she loves with money. I get to do the stuff that I love with money. And then we come together and we bring it into our family. And it's one of the things that I think we've really grown really well on, that I think we're in a really good spot with. So that's what I have to say. I'll kick it to you, Melissa.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Alex. Hi, guys. Again, Melissa, alcoholic. One thing I want to say is a lot of people sent me messages during the break and asked for my phone number or something, and I'll give that to everyone. And if I didn't respond to you, it was just because it got lost in all of them. I'm super happy to respond to everyone, and we'll answer more when we have the next break. The other thing that I'll say too is that, I find that, especially the service manual is a lot like the big book. You know how you go to a big book meeting and people will say, man, I've read this book 75 times, but this sentence today is so much, or I never even saw this before. So much of my experience aligning it to our principles of the 3 legacies is the same thing. Reading the service manual, it's wow. My favorite line in AA, and it's been this way probably for a year or so, is out of concept 4. And it's one sentence, and it says, all of us deeply desire to belong. And belong is in italics. And I think that sums up alcoholism. Okay, so when it comes to money, I'm not good at it. I don't like talking about it. I like spending it, and I like ignoring it. Alex literally has heart attacks of excitement when I got Debbie to be my sponsor, and we talked about money and her budget, which I think it's $30 a week, 25, 35. Anytime I talk to her about money and my spending, it's always more about, there's a lot of spiritual stuff too, but kind of saving and not spending, one of my friends always says that we seek relief through things. He gets so excited when Debbie tells me anything about saving money. Very exciting to him. So I have a friend of mine in AA that says that we all seek relief somehow, right? And so I seek relief through through shopping. I love shopping. I love clothes. And that can be an okay thing about me. I love clothes. I love my closet. I would love to take my camera on this and show you my closet and tell you about all my clothes, but when I start to seek relief through that is when it becomes a problem. I like to ignore bills. I always have. I have a spiritual principle. I have a set of my own spiritual principles that I live by. One of them is to calm the F down. That's my number one spiritual principle in all situations, is to remember that, calm the F down. I said the real F word, but I won't say it on this meeting. But another one is that I open the bills and I pay them. And some people don't need that to be a spiritual principle. It just happens to them, and I would rather ignore all of it. So this is not what it is. I love Bravo, the TV channel. I love The Real Housewives. My best friend in AA, God just brought us together. We go to the psychiatric center and meet with our sponsees. We go serve the intergroup. Then we get manicures and we talk about The Real Housewives. I love The Real Housewives. And so I was watching Beverly Hills last week. Sometimes it's a bad thing to do because I don't live in Beverly Hills, but I watch it and I start to think I should have that budget of spending. And so anyways, I'm watching the show and there's a fight between some women. And one of the women says to this lady, the other lady, she says, your clothes are amazing, but I don't know where you get your money. I don't know if you guys really have money. I heard your husband owes money to all these people. And that one goes back to her husband and says, this is what she said. And the husband says, you go back and tell her that you don't have enough clothes. And I'm just going to give you more clothes and more clothes and more clothes. I woke Alex up when I went to bed. I'm I just heard the most romantic thing ever in my life. This husband said, I'm going to give you more and more and more clothes. And so what's funny is as I was preparing for this talk, I'm going back to my service manual. And here's this line in Concept 12, Warranty 2. There is not much romance in paying the landlord, right? There's romance in, for me, clothes, and so I just have to constantly grow with this stuff. Alex seeks relief sometimes through like control of the money. He also seeks relief through like Excel spreadsheets and budgets. Those things give him a lot of relief. And I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I just want to ignore it. I don't want to do it. And so it's a work in progress for me all the time. The long form of the seventh tradition says this: nothing can so surely destroy our spiritual heritage as feudal disputes over property, money, and authority. And so Alex and I, have put work and time and like prayer and God and AA into our relationship. And it's pretty good, and so I don't need to destroy it over my feudal trips to Target, right? I know everyone who works at the Target by me. They have a Starbucks in there too. I know them all. I know all the things. I know everything. Like, I don't need to like ruin the work of our relationship by a trip to Target. I'll say this too, is that, I spend money differently. You know what I mean? Like, I would never spend money like on a house. Why would you buy a house? Just live in your apartment. I wouldn't buy a nice car. I wouldn't go on vacation. I went to the International Convention in Toronto because I lived in Buffalo, and it's like, not very far. It's like an hour and a half drive, International Convention in Texas. That's a flight and a hotel. And I don't think so. I wouldn't spend money on things. I don't spend big money on things. And Alex says, like, we need to put our money into this. We need to go to the International Convention in Texas. Like, we need to go on a vacation. We should go here. And I said, like, no. And then, but just like the ability to like trust that part of him, like trust that we have in our principles. I was able to do those things. What's funny is probably for like the last couple of years, like Alex wants to join a country club, and I wish there was a different word. Like, I just sometimes call it a golf club because I don't really like the image of a country club. So he wants to join a golf club, but it's expensive. And also, we live in Rochester, New York. It's September. I heard Judge Flores talk about, or maybe someone else, about how there's going to be a fire in California. Winter is here in Rochester. It will snow by the end of the month. The last snow that we had was in May, right? And I think, like, Alex, this is a waste of money. You're unmuting yourself. Are you going to like correct me right now?
I just thought Game of Thrones winter is coming.
Winter is coming, yes. And then like, it's a waste of money, and finally, like I say, like, okay, you really want to do that. You want to join it. Okay. Like, we can afford it. You can do it. And so this is so funny, is that I learned through my sponsor that scheduling phone calls with my sponsees worked really well. It's really made me an effective sponsor, that I know when you're going to call and I'm going to answer the phone and talk to you. It's eliminated phone tag. I sponsor a number of women. Alex sponsors more men than I sponsor. And I've always said to him, like, you might try scheduling your phone calls. It's really worked like super well for me. And he said, no, not going to work for me. Not going to do that. Not going to work for me. And then all of a sudden one day he gets all of his sponsees on a phone call schedule, and 20 minutes each. And they go 6 o'clock, 6:20, 6:40, 7 o'clock, 7:20. I was like, wow, that's a really big jump for you. I'm like kind of impressed with this. Like, this is like some spiritual maturity. And then I realized, no, it's literally so he can golf more. He has put his sponsees on a Monday, Tuesday phone call schedule so that he can golf as much as possible. But then his sponsor said, like, calm the F down on the golf. And he still has his sponsees on a phone call schedule. It's worked. Wow, imagine that. Something that I said might work, it would work for him. And it's made our life a little bit easier. You know what I mean? And he's happy. You know what I mean? Like, probably the most romantic thing I could say to him is like, I'm going to learn how to golf, right? The most romantic thing he could say to me is like, let's go to the mall. And so like, I just know that this is always a place of growth for me. Sponsorship is effective here. Like, these principles are effective. Honesty, openness, vulnerability, all of those things keep helping me when it comes to finance. That is all for me. Alex, back to you.
That is pretty romantic. I can tell you. I mean, that's love. All right. So we're going to take our last topic. It's a kind of like miscellaneous self-support. I want to talk about some mistakes I made with time. I grew up in an AA where, I was single. I came to AA. I was a young guy. I was single, and AA was my life. I mean, I could go to 3 meetings a day. I could do all, and it was appropriate. It was really appropriate. And as my life grew, I ended up having a career, and the next thing, Melissa and I are together. We have a child, and she doesn't like me not coming home like 5 days a week until like midnight. Right? That's not working anymore. You know what I mean? And of course, she's the problem, naturally. And, but not really. And I remember we would get in so many arguments because, like, I would just, if I went to go spend time with a sponsee, it's like, come over, we're going to sit down for an hour, we'll have dinner, We'll go to a meeting. We'll go to the coffee shop after. Like, that's how a sponsee interaction is. And that's cool when you're single. That's cool. That's great. It's awesome. But when, it doesn't work anymore, right? And so I used to always have such a hard time with it because I'm like, I'm doing God's work here. I'm helping God's kids, I'm out there sponsoring people and all that stuff. It was really hard for me to understand. We have so many fights. And really what I would hear is this. I'm like number 8 on your priority list, Alex. I'm number 8. I'm like number 7. I feel like I'm not a priority to you. And in my heart, I would say, well, of course you're a priority, And my sponsor would say a priority isn't what you say, it's what you do, right? You think of it like a pie chart. How much of your time is spent in different areas of your life? Go look back at your last 2 weeks of your life. What did you spend time doing? That'll very quickly tell you what your priorities are, And she was right. I would give the best of myself to my job, to my sponsees, and then I took her for granted, right? When I got home, I'm tired. I got nothing left. And it's like, I want to be home. I want to relax now. And she's like, well, why do I get the butt end of it? You know what I mean? Like, why, and I just couldn't see it. I just couldn't see it, And then one day, it's actually kind of funny. Most times people put things on Facebook, it's like divisive. But my last sponsor put a thing on Facebook one day. He said, priorities, God, family, others. And I said, wow, sponsees are others. They're not above my wife. And I struggled with this. And I was at this retreat. And Bob B was talking about when he was 7 years sober and he rebuilt his marriage with his wife. And he said that one of the things the therapist told him was that they had to have a date night every Friday night date night. And I remember thinking to myself, me and Melissa and I are both very busy and we're just busy people. We sponsor a lot of people. We're very involved in AA. We have a dog. We're just busy, And I remember thinking to myself, I wish I could do that. We're just too busy. We're way too important, right? More than Bob, Anyway, but I remember thinking to myself, we can't do that. And then the next thought I had is well, you have enough time for what you prioritize, So what's got to go? And I remember I talked to my grant sponsor. He was there and I said, I'm really struggling with this question. And I said to him about the priority thing. And I said, I've been making my sponsees a priority above my life. I think I'm wrong. Immaturity. I mean, that's probably a simple question for most people. Well, not for me, And my grant sponsor just kind of laughs, goes, yeah, you're definitely wrong, man. You're definitely wrong, And what I learned was I had to come home and make an amends to Melissa. That was years we would fight about that, I had to go home and make an amends to her, and my priority for my life is God. Sponsoring other people and my involvement in AA is a requirement for me to have an open channel to God. I have to do it. But for me, it's been about growing into finding what works for me to keep that connection alive without hurting my family. You know what I mean? And I've had to grow into that, And so what I do is to Melissa's point, it has been really good doing a thing for my golf because all my sponsee calls happen from 4:00 p.m. to about 8:00 Monday and Tuesday, 20-minute intervals. And then we can talk during the week. We can talk during the week if things are going on, you know what I mean? And now I have Wednesday through Sunday to do whatever I want. It's amazing. So I have my sponsees are and before I'll get calls all the time, every day. And I'm on the phone all the time where I'm not present with my family. And so this golf defect has allowed me to become more balanced in my life and how I show up for my family outside of just golf. You know what I mean? And it's been a real blessing for me. And so my prioritization is God. What do I have to do to keep that channel open? Family, my wife and my daughter and others. And I'm going to tell you my tendency. I have some sponsees that I had to kick them in the butt to get involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I probably shouldn't sponsor them, honestly. But, I'm not that way, right? I'm the guy that they have to pull back. And I think my responsibility in that is remembering that my wife isn't a liar. So when she comes to me and she says, I'm not feeling love, I don't feel like we're connected, I shouldn't argue with her. You're wrong. And defend myself. I should say, oh, wow, I'm so sorry you feel that way. What can we do to get back in line? You know what I mean? And that's some spiritual maturity and growth that I've had to go through when it comes to our time. The next thing is, and I feel remiss doing a relationship panel, not talking about love languages, right? That's the thing. And so my love languages is touch and, words of affirmation. I call it ego stroking and sex. I mean, that's really kind of the love language that we're going on there, you know? And so my wife's is gifts and acts of service. And so I would give Melissa the best I got. Like, let's cuddle on the couch and watch a movie. That's the best I got, right? Let me tell you how great you are. Best I got. And she's like, I don't feel loved. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean you don't feel loved? I'm giving you the best of me. And the reality is, because what makes her feel loved isn't what makes me feel loved. For me to go to the store and get even a simple card and write a nice note and give it to my wife is like her learning how to play golf with me. You know what I mean? Like the nicest thing in the world. For me to go on Amazon and have a gift just come to the house without her asking for it, it's a big deal. You know what I mean? So I need to meet my wife's love language where she's at, you know, and that'll get in my last topic I want to talk about, and that's the dreaded chores. Like, so I told you, like, you know, one of the big beefs between my wife and I is that, you know, so my wife, she says it's her language, is that she was a resentful housewife when she was 12 years old. That's from her talk. You know, her parents put her to work. My parents did not put me to work. My parents did everything for me. And so I don't care if the house is a little messy. I grew up in a hoarder's house. So a little bit of messy is like clean. You know what I mean? I don't, you know, it doesn't bother me, right? And for her, it's got to be like what do you say, Melissa? Like, people don't live here. It's got to look like people don't live here. You know what I mean? And so I'm sitting under this idea of like, I don't care if there's a little like clothes by the side of my bed. I don't care if there's a little thing on the counter. I don't even notice it. And so she would get so mad at me. And so she would tell me, you know, all these things. And we fight about it. And I say, I'm doing so much. And then I'd use money as a weapon, right? That would be the thing that I fall into. And so after some time with this, what I finally realized is this, right? I never say never, but I'm probably never going to get to a place where I care about like keeping our house spotless. I just don't care. You know what I mean? I'll never get to a place where I want to make sure, like, if I drop the clothes right next to the hamper next to my bed, fine with me. Doesn't bother me a bit. You know what I mean? And I'll probably never change from that belief. But here's the thing. And so for Melissa to come to me and for me to change to say, I really want to do the chores and I really want to keep the house clean, I don't feel like that inspiration will ever come to me. But I had to change the question. The question wasn't, do you want to keep your house clean? The question is, do you want to have your wife feel loved? That's the question. And so when I'm not doing my chores, when I'm not cleaning up after myself, it's not a fact of me not cleaning up. It's a fact of Melissa takes that as if I think she's my maid, that I think it's her job. It makes her feel very unloved. That's a game-changing question, right? I want my wife to feel loved. I want her to feel supported. I want her to feel like that she's a big deal to me. And so that becomes the motivation for me to do my laundry, to do those things, to do the chores of the home. It's a game changer. You know what I mean? And it's been awesome. And Melissa's great at it because, well, again, marriage isn't equitable. She can clean our house in 30 minutes. It takes me 5 hours. You know what I mean? She's just efficient with it. She's just good at that, you know? Organizing things, amazing, right? Like, there's just certain skills she has that I just don't possess. And so her ask of me is like, I'll do more of that type of work. Just don't make it harder for me. Make it seem as though you don't take me for granted. You know what I mean? And that's a good deal. That's a good deal. That's a fair deal. You know, and I can do that. And so that's been some growth for me, you know. I don't know. I'll say this and I'll be quiet, and then Melissa could take us away. Is that I tell to her a lot, like I don't know if another woman could have walked with me from the swamp that I came from to being the man I am today in our relationship. It takes a very strong person to do that. I am incredibly grateful because I know what Bob B says is right. We have the same relationship over and over again. And whether it was Melissa, it was the woman that I thought met the image that needed to happen or something else, I would have brought the same thing to the table. And I'm so grateful that she's taken the time with me lovingly to walk and grow into who God would have me be. You know what I mean? And I love you. That's it. And thank you guys.
Thanks, Alex. Alex said to me like a month ago, I just want you to be impressed with me. So Alex, that was great. I'm impressed with you. Good job with the times. Good job talking. I don't know if you can see, but over his corner is all of my big books. And that one that looks like a first edition is a first edition. And that was one of my presents that I got. And so
at Legacy Weekend.
at Legacy Weekend. Yep, I 15 years sober at Legacy Weekend. I got that gift. So a couple of just things that like I just wanted to say in the end is like stuff that I don't know, like I talked to my sponsees about. And one of them is that line that I read from Concept 4, all of us deeply desire to belong. And I think about that when it comes to our marriage, right? That like Alex he deeply desires to belong in this relationship with me. And so do I. And so I like match my behavior past it. I do a nightly inventory at night in my phone. And one of the questions that I have in there is like, how did I show Alex love today? You know, another thing that I've done, which I don't recommend to you unless it's going to work for you, is that Alex likes it when I put things in writing. And so the last couple of months, I do an inventory of him for the day and send it to him. Now, that might not work for some people, not at all. But I make him a little list of glows, like you've been a glowing star, and grows, area you need to grow. And he likes it. I just write it down. It's not mean. It's just, here's the things that you were glowing at today. Here's where you growed. One of my favorite quotes is this quote from Mother Teresa, and I won't get it all right, but I think about it when it comes to like our warranties, our 12th tradition, our steps 6 and 7, and it's about humility. And it says something like this: when I am humble, neither praise nor disgrace will affect me because I know who I am. And I think that's so much those essence of those like steps, tradition, concepts, like, and so like, that's like where I want to live and where I want to be and like where I want to be in this relationship and like where I want Alex to be. Right. And that's like where we meet each other in the middle. I just am like very inspired by God to say this one little story to end things. And that's about Emily, you know, our daughter. You know, Emily has always known AA. I've been sober before, you know, she was born. You know, Alex has been sober like most of her life. And, you know, she just knows AA. She knows about inventory. She knows about sponsees. You know, she sometimes gets mad at our sponsees, like when we're, you know what I mean? Like she just knows about it. She's done a couple 12-step calls and she just lives in this environment where she knows about AA and she knows that it works and she knows that it works for us. One time, one of her friends said to her when she was little, like, what's your religion? And she said, I'm not sure, but my stepdad is Jewish and my mom is spiritual. So that's probably what I am. You know, and she knows about AA. So I was driving Emily. She had 2 friends come over for a sleepover and we were driving. We were going to go out to eat at Moe's and we're driving to go get there. And one of Emily's friends says, as we're driving, she's like, oh, that's the apartment where my mom lives. And the other friend says, like, why does your mom live there and not live with your dad? Why do your parents have different houses? And the friend Anna says, well, my mom lives there because she's a really bad drunk. She's a bad alcoholic. And she was such a bad alcoholic. She would scream at me. She would throw things at me. She said she used to throw glass. It was her favorite thing to throw. She would throw glass all over the garage. Anna said, sometimes I would have to go take my sister and I would have to cover myself up over her while she was screaming, drunk, and throwing glass. And Anna is saying this in my car, and I think like, oh my God, what do I say to this little girl right now? You know, and she doesn't stop talking. And once she finishes saying that, the next breath she said, oh, and that's my favorite place to go get ice cream. Do you guys get ice cream there? Do you like it? And I'm still in my car. We drive to the restaurant and I think like, what do I say to her? What do I say to this 8-year-old? How do I carry the message to this 8-year-old? What do I say? What do I do? I've never had this situation, you know, and we get in line at Moe's, like the place to go get like some Mexican food. And Emily comes up to me and she says, I'm going to take Anna to the bathroom. And I just knew like what was happening in that moment, you know? And so Emily and Anna went to the bathroom and Emily said to Anna, she said, your mom should go to AA. My parents are in AA. Your mom should go there. It could save her life. And Emily came back out from the bathroom and like just looked at me. And you know how like, you know, like one of your sponsees like really helped that newcomer and you can see it and you can know, like, I just knew like Emily just did that, you know? And so, Anna said to her, my mom is going there. Do you really think it will work? Like, that's where my mom is going, you know? And the next day Anna's mom came to pick her up and I didn't say anything to her. And then I saw her in a meeting, like maybe like a month or two ago, or a month or two after that. So I went to this meeting and she was there. And after the meeting, she came up to me and she said, do you know who I am? And I said, yes, you're Anna's mom. And she said, you're Emily's mom. And she said, Anna came home from the sleepover at your house. And she said, as soon as we walked into the house, she said, Anna just started sobbing. And she said to me, she said, Emily's parents are in AA. She said, I never thought I would know anyone who would know what it's like. And Emily's parents are in AA too. And you could be in AA and you could be like Emily's parents, and like that was, Emily was like 8 years old and now she's 16, and Anna's mom has been sober since then, and like when we talk about this, like we have this like, topic of like relationships and the principles, like, that is what our life looks like. That's the life that we get to have together, and we get to share in that. We share in it as a couple, and even like our daughter does 12-step calls to her friends. In concept 12 and warranty 6, it says this line, and I think this is like the purpose of my life and the purpose of my relationship with Alex. Freedom under God to grow in his likeness and image will ever be the quest, right? Like my job in life is to grow with God, like what God is, who God is, how God is in my life. My job is to not ignore God. My job is to be helpful in AA. My job is to serve people, and I am so blessed that Alex and I get to have this together, that we get to have this life, that it has worked for us most of the time. Most of the time, I really, really, really love him, I really do, and I just, when Emily was born and her father left me in the hospital to go buy more heroin, I held her in my arms and I cried. I had been up for hours giving birth to her. My parents had gone. I've been lying to everyone about how he was sober when he wasn't. And I thought, this is what it will be like forever, and here I am today, like happily married most of the time, happily getting presents most of the time, like living this life together that we share. And it's all because of AA. It's because of AA. Like my parents are at peace today with me, whatever they are, wherever they're doing, it's because of AA. I have a life that is beyond anything, and it's because of AA. And so I'm so glad that we got to come here and do this with you guys. And that is all I have to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Wow. Thank you so